So for all those that listen to our podcast or follow our social media channels, they might have seen that we've been focusing on what I think would be classed as the hottest book in cricket, Crickonomics, which is written by Tim Wigmore and Stefan Szymanski. We're actually delighted for the inaugural guest on the 212 Men to welcome one of the co-authors, which is Tim Wigmore. Tim, good morning.
Cheers, that's very kind. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. The first TTM interview, do you feel prestige or do you feel...
Yeah. Do I get a special do I get a signed bat and something?
Send an award in the post.
So Tim, obviously we spoke through Twitter first and foremost, didn't we? And me and yourself, Bott, are rifling through this book. We think it's great. But I guess the first question would be, where's this book come about and what sort of gave you the inspiration to put it together?
Thanks. So I was just in touch with Stefan a bit for other stuff. Obviously, I was aware of Crickonomics, which was, I think you guys have read it as well, which was very, very interesting. And then we kind of got talking, whereas we're both, he's a cricket fan, obviously, he knows I am. And then, we thought we could try and do an equivalent for cricket. And it's a very different book to Crickonomics in some ways, but also, there's some parallels there. And I guess it's about kind of stepping back and trying to ask and even sometimes answer some of the deeper questions.
Do you think, in terms of kind of sports, do you think cricket is a natural home for this kind of book? Obviously, as the book talks about, we're always in existential crisis. We're very stats heavy. We love our numbers. Is it almost the perfect match for a book like this, cricket?
Well, one thing that Stefan said is very interesting is that, the actual amount of academic research and rigor in cricket is far, far less. Historically, it's far, far less than for football and stuff. Lots of cricket numbers, as you talked about, has actually been kind of trivia stats, as I call them. This is the first 100 by New Zealander at Lord's on a Sunday, which actually tells you nothing about the game, really.
It's history.
It's just kind of idiosyncratic stuff, but doesn't really analyze the game. And I suppose, so what we've done, he's done some papers himself, and he obviously knows who's done interesting papers, and we've done new research specifically for this book as well. So we've tried to apply techniques and stuff to cricket, and actually, a lot of stuff is, a lot of the chapters are not actually that particularly number heavy. But they are very kind of generally very modern, I suppose, but not always. We have a chapter on league cricket, the game's great miss opportunity, which in England, which is very interesting. So we're looking at quite a diverse way. But I think there is a bit of a myth about cricket in many ways. People talk about the numbers and data, but that's often at this trivia level that I've talked about. And actually often you find quite basic and really fundamental questions that kind of not really asked generally. So hopefully we've tried to do some of that, and it's a very, very global book in its scope. We have everything from the rise of India's talent pool developing to the kind of private school divide in England, and the rise of Asia. Very, very very, very broad, I think, which hopefully is part of the appeal of the book. I guess people might not like every chapter, but there should be something for everyone, certainly.
Definitely. And I think one thing I definitely found about the book was each individual chapter almost had its own narrative. So I was jumping around at times, just looking at which chapters interest me the most. I suppose I am a person who's always about 30 seconds away from existential crisis. So I'm probably focused on the global stuff rather than the micro stuff. The thing that really interested me was kind of this trend of a nation versus nation sport towards more of a club versus club sport, and kind of how the global game might, or the ecosystem of the global game might rearrange itself. How far do you think that'll go? Could you imagine a Red Ball franchise league? Is that something we could see in the future?
Yeah, so actually, obviously last week, the IPL new rights for 5 years went for $6.2 billion. $6.2 billion US dollars. So that's, so basically what we're describing is that historically, if you look, cricket has been very unusual for a major sport, and how little of its money has come from domestic matches. Before the IPL, about 90% of cricket's revenue came from international matches. Football is about 90% actually comes from club v club matches. So that's the sort of two extremes. And cricket is on this journey towards more of a football model. And I guess the question is where it ends up, and how much space is left for nation v nation matches. And so what's happening basically is franchise leagues. Well, the IPL certainly is soaring, and some others are doing pretty well. Although it's quite an uneven field, but the IPL absolutely soaring. Global international tournaments are doing really well. T20 World Cup, the ODI World Cup, they're doing really well. But bilateral cricket is basically really struggling, certainly outside Australia, England, and India. And so slightly kind of a three-tier economy, which creating these pressures. And actually, the more that boards can't rely on international cricket because bilateral rights are struggling and stuff, the more they want to actually invest and double down more on their domestic T20 league. So the pressures is very much all trending in that direction. But to go back to your question, I don't see a Red Bull league. I just don't think franchise league. I don't think there'd be enough money in it. I think it would be fascinating, and in some ways it could work. But you think so much of the appeal of Test cricket is actually that idea of nation v nation, and that's almost like a kind of, if you take that away, I don't think as much interest would necessarily be there. And I think it would be a much harder sell than another T20 league, but it would be fascinating to have a 2-month Red Bull league wherever it was, and draft and stuff. That would be really, really cool. But I think it's very, very, very small chance only.
I've sort of the chapter of the book when you talked about the commercialization of cricket. So we're born in 1994, both of us respectively, so we won't remember Kerry Packer's World Series cricket, but my dad would have done in the 70s, and that was the book talks about the influence that's made and sort of the effects it's made to the game today. But moving towards the IPL, like you've just mentioned, how far do you actually see the IPL investing in other nations' leagues? So we're already seeing, I think, a couple of weeks back we talked about how there's interest in the new South African league. There's interest if the Big Bash, for instance, was privatised, there'd be interest there as well. Do you see this going as far as grassroots? So, for instance, like a country like West Indies, could you see someone like the IPL investing in those grassroots to ensure those leagues are great feeders for these tournaments, or are they already doing this?
Yeah, I mean, the model is really what Man City have done in football. The City Football Group has about, I think, 9 clubs around the world, from Melbourne to Mumbai to New York and so on. And that's the model for, Kolkata have led this, and now other franchises are following, so the idea is basically they have their name on these other leagues. So you have these tie-ups for sponsors, but also for players. It's a way, their aim is to be able to kind of manage their players for a longer period of time, rather than just have the IPL and then you just kind of lose them for 9 months a year. Actually, that's not a great way to nurture talent. And I suppose the grassroots, I can't see that particularly because the incentive structure just doesn't really encourage that. This is the problem with it. Actually, the IPL auction means if you discover a gem, he still has to go to auction, and you don't really get paid. Someone else can then bid more for him. So what I would like to see, and what we do talk about in the book, is if you were being really ambitious, what would you do? It would be almost a bit like, the NBA has got academies around the world, so the IPL could do that, or you could say you kind of divide up the world, risk style, I guess, and say to the IPL franchise, this is your territory. You can do what you want, and as part of that, you can get a couple of academy players every year, which you get before the auction. So you'd have, some franchises would take maybe Canada and maybe America, USA. Others would take West Indies and so on, and then it'd be like if you develop talent here, you can get a couple of these guys before the auction. That would be a really interesting model, and actually that's what you could see get a bit like what happens in football, but that would actually be the biggest domestic teams probably helping the sport develop around the world, which is one of the questions to what extent that's going to happen, because we clearly have you're getting lots of talent emerge from kind of emerging countries, but the pathway still is a bit uneven, and anything to improve that would be great.
Yeah. In terms of kind of creating talent, I suppose there's one in investing in the game, but there's also kind of the global reach of the game from a television's perspective. We just talked about the IPL deal being around $6 billion. For Test cricket to survive, how important is it to kind of remove the paywall structure that we've built post, I suppose, in the book, it referenced 2005, you have circa 8 million people watching the Ashes. 2019, that's dropped to a quarter, about 2 million. Do you ever see do you ever see the ECB dropping that, or is it too much of a financial incentive to have Sky broadcasting Test cricket? Do you ever see?
No, I think I said in 2017 it would be great to have like the Laws Test on free to air, and you'd get a kind of, on BBC, Wimbledon would kind of probably play the greatest hits, Botham's Ashes and I guess Stokes' Ashes now as well. But that would be really cool to have a kind of weaker Test cricket. Obviously, you'd be losing quite a lot from the Sky rights. I would argue that actually that would be an investment in the future and kind of nurturing future fans as well. Because the issue is, the Test cricket audiences are aging, partly because it's so expensive. We saw at Laws with the tickets being, well over £100. So that would be great to see. I don't see it as being imminent, unfortunately. We've obviously now got a system where at least there is some cricket on free to air again. So that's better than nothing, but it doesn't feel quite. It feels very much like if you're only going to have short format on free to air, that's very much kind of pushing future generation by definition into those formats.
Yeah, I sort of thought about that when I said to you, does that sort of indicate where the ECB is going in terms of putting the 100 on free to air TV? Does it seem as that's where the long term audience is going to be?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big reasons for the 100, which links to what we talked about earlier, is international cricket becoming less reliable as a sort of cash. So, you can't have Australia and India every year. Then you want something that you don't need international teams for, and that's the idea of the 100. So, the 100 is absolutely crucial to the ECB and how they see the financial future of the game in England.
You talk about in the book, obviously, the sustainability of international cricket. And I've been lucky enough to been to some countries to watch England, Barbados, Sri Lanka, South Africa, Australia, and particularly West Indies. I think when you look at it there, what was jaw-dropping in the book, and I think something that will surprise a lot of people, is the sheer losses a country like West Indies will make when someone like Bangladesh comes over, as opposed to when India or England come over. And I know you talk about the influence of the Barmy Army, you talk about influence of TV rights for those particular deals. What sort of outlook do you give for international? I know we talked about bilateral series, but what outlook do you give for international cricket for nations like Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, the West Indies in 5 or 10 years' time?
Yeah, so basically, the summer when Bangladesh and Sri Lanka toured the Caribbean, West Indies made a loss of 20 million, which is frightening, which is insane. But basically, you're in a situation where there needs to be a proper economic model to subsidise these matches. We used to have the Test Cricket Fund, which now doesn't exist. There is a lot of money in cricket; it's just divided up very, very badly. And that's the question. Ideally, you would have the ICC sort of run the World Test Championship, which obviously is not happening. It's not going to happen because the balls don't want that, or the biggest balls don't want that. These are real questions for international cricket. Even New Zealand lose $500,000 on their home-to-home Test matches, which given they're World Test champions, albeit probably on a bit of a doubt now, is probably pretty boring for Test cricket fans.
And I often beat this drum with Rob in terms of kind of the position of England fans and kind of maybe having a sense of being a little bit deluded, really, in terms of the state of Test cricket, in the sense we've got the Barmy Army that go around and fill stadiums. Our stadiums are always full. And I suppose as fans that have a love for Test cricket, what avenues do you think there are for us to keep Test cricket alive, to move back to a system where Test cricket is the pinnacle, both in the eyes of the fans and the administrators? Do you ever see that being something that can be done?
Not really, to be honest. I think the market forces, what people want is shorter formats generally. That doesn't mean Test cricket will die, but it does mean that, the most popular format of the game is T20, and that's probably going to continue apace even more. I mean, the Barmy Army they do make a little difference around the edges, and actually a probably bigger difference is in terms of wanting to watch at home on TV, which means the broadcasting rights of these are quite big. But I mean, you kind of can't fight market force. You can only fight market forces so much.
Sure.
And I'd argue in some ways having 3 formats is a real strength for cricket. It just needs. I know it can create all sorts of difficulties, but also, you should need you need kind of a better system, and things like the World Championship I think are better than nothing. But yeah, you need to be really looking at how can the ICC how can they subsidize the salaries of players, so for for smaller countries they are incentivized financially to play Test cricket.
Yeah. I guess just to finish off, Tim, to discuss the book itself, I mean, how long it's been published for now? Have you had any sort of initial reactions to the book? Have you any comments? Anyone come up to you and said, reading the book has changed my outlook? I mean, I suppose that's probably the objective of writing, I suppose.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, no, it's been great. We've had a really nice reaction to it. So it came out end of May, so 3-4 weeks ago now. Had very nice kind of comments. We've had nice reviews in sort of the Times, the FT, and various other places. So it's been a pleasant surprise, actually. It's been great. So yeah, everyone should go out and get a copy.
Yeah. Where can people buy this book, Tim?
All good bookshops. It's not a good bookshop if they don't have it.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're going to continue to talk about the book.
Definitely.
I think we'd like to summarise it at some time. We're going to keep pushing it to people. I know that a couple of our friends have already have purchased the book on our say so to speak. So wish you every success with the book and any future books that you write. And obviously, we hope that your job can be a lot more pleasurable now England have started to win a few games.
Cheers, guys. Thanks so much. Yeah, all the best with the podcast. Look forward to listening.
Thanks, Tim.